Dear Thom, you've previously spoken about how Nelson Mandela was able to find peace and joy while in solitary confinement on Robben Island, which suggests that it doesn't really matter what our external conditions are as long as we bring complete acceptance to those conditions. I think I am having difficulty reconciling this with the idea of being an agent for progressive change and leaning into my preferences and following charm. Can you help me reconcile these two ideas?
Yes, let Nelson be your exemplar. It's not that as long as we can, make the most of the environment we're in, it's so long as we have the capability to. Nobody else on Robben Island was having the experiences that Nelson was having. Nelson uniquely on Robben Island inside of a tiny little 8 foot by 10 foot cell made of thick stone, told me that he was having an experience that made him an absolutely unique prisoner in that place. Everybody else was suffering egregiously. He suffered a bit, but he didn't suffer that much because of certain consciousness states he was able to get into that he told me about. And it was that consciousness state that allowed him to use a little shaft of light that came in through a crack between the rocks as his beacon. That was his beacon that appeared every day. He didn't tell any of the prison guards about it. He didn't tell the other prisoners about it whenever he managed to meet them, because he was in solitary for a long time and it was rare for him to be able to talk to other people. What it was that made him a great leader and one of the greatest activists in the world was that consciousness state. The consciousness state that failed to make a prison a real prison. And so, my questioner, you need to be in Nelson's consciousness state. And the way you can get to it is through Vedic meditation. Nelson didn't have Vedic meditation, he didn't have that gift, but he was born in a high consciousness state. And all he needed was some confinement and being forced away from all of the outside stimuli to awaken that consciousness state. That's my assessment of Nelson. And, can you be an activist just because you've been able to maximize the input inside of even a jail cell? Of course. Look at him. He's one of the biggest activists ever on the face of the earth. Changed an entire nation and changed it forever. That's activism. It comes from the state of consciousness. I'm going to say something else too, which I don't want anyone to take as an insult. It's a kind of lame-brained version of activism to use a tiny percent of your brain and be satisfied with that and just be outraged by the world and make a lot of noise. Making a lot of noise, stating the obvious, while using only a tiny percentage of your brain is not effective activism. Effective activism is effective there's certain metrics of how effective it is. My favorite metrics of the last recent few decades are the activism of Mahatma Gandhi that got the British out of 247 years of gripping that country and robbing it. There's a recent article in the Economist demonstrating that Britain stole $47 trillion from India during the 247 years that it was there, and spent that on colony building elsewhere, not on India. And South Africa, we can go on and on about it. Simply to shout about these things and make a lot of noise is not effective activism. Nelson Mandela was a very effective activist. He became the head of state of the country that would not let him walk on a beach that was for white people. He became the head of state of that country. That's activism. That's super effective. And he didn't lord it over the white people who made him leave that beach. He included them in the decision-making processes after he became the head of state. This is really true activism. It takes a high consciousness state to be an effective activist. Anybody can make noise and shout about the obvious, but can you change it? If you can change it, then you're an effective activist, and that requires using your whole brain.